The human ego is a delicate construct, a psychological framework that houses our sense of self-worth, identity, and value. In romantic relationships, the ego becomes even more vulnerable, exposed to the person we trust most. While most people enter relationships hoping to build each other up, certain behaviors can inflict deep, lasting damage to a partner's sense of self. This guide explores the actions and patterns that can permanently wound a woman's ego, not to encourage such behavior, but to illuminate what to avoid and understand the profound impact of our words and actions. Understanding the female ego. Before examining destructive behaviors, it's essential to understand what we mean by ego in this context. The ego isn't simply vanity or pride. It's the core of self-perception, encompassing self-esteem, confidence, identity, and self-worth. Women, like all people, develop their ego through life experiences, relationships, societal messages, and internal narratives. However, women often face unique pressures, societal expectations about appearance, behavior, and roles, historical and ongoing gender-based discrimination, cultural messages about worthiness tied to youth, beauty, or maternal capabilities, and the balancing act between strength and likability. When a romantic partner, someone who sees her most intimately, attacks these vulnerable areas, the damage cuts deeper than criticism from strangers or casual acquaintances. The person she's chosen to be vulnerable with becomes the source of her deepest wounds. The most damaging behaviors. 1. Comparing her to other women. Perhaps nothing destroys a woman's ego faster than being compared unfavorably to other women, especially by the man who's supposed to cherish her uniqueness. Why it's so damaging. Comparison attacks the core of her identity and makes her feel replaceable, inadequate, and constantly in competition. It suggests that she's not enough as she is, and that you're mentally shopping for something better. Examples that destroy. My ex used to, followed by something she doesn't do, commenting positively on other women's appearance, body, or qualities in a way that implies she lacks them. Why can't you be more like, in reference to friends, celebrities, or anyone else? Bringing up past partners in a favorable light during conflicts. Following, liking, or overtly admiring other women on social media in ways that make her feel diminished. The lasting impact. She begins to view herself through a lens of deficiency. Every interaction becomes a test of whether she measures up. Her spontaneity disappears as she constantly monitors herself against phantom competitors. Trust erodes because she can never be sure you're satisfied with her. Years later, even after growth and healing, comparison wounds can trigger intense insecurity. 2. Mocking her appearance or body. Physical appearance is often deeply tied to a woman's sense of self-worth due to societal conditioning. When her partner, the one who should love her body, becomes a critic, the damage is profound. Why it's so damaging. Women's bodies are constantly scrutinized by society. Her partner's criticism confirms her worst fears, that she's not attractive enough, that her physical imperfections make her unlovable, and that her value is conditional on meeting aesthetic standards. Examples that destroy. Jokes about her weight, even playful ones. Negative comments about specific body parts, breasts, stomach, thighs, etc. Expressing disappointment about physical changes, aging, post-pregnancy, weight fluctuations. Comparing her body to how it used to be. Showing lack of attraction through words, body language, or rejection. Criticizing her fashion choices, makeup, or styling in demeaning ways, making her feel embarrassed about her body during intimate moments. The lasting impact. She may develop disordered eating, exercise obsessions, or body dysmorphia. Sexual intimacy becomes fraught with anxiety and self-consciousness. She may avoid situations where her body is visible, beaches, pools, intimate moments. The mirror becomes an enemy. Even if she later achieves her ideal body, the psychological scars remain, creating a disconnect between how she looks and how she feels about herself. 3. Dismissing her feelings and emotions. Emotional invalidation is an insidious form of psychological harm that erodes a person's trust in their own perceptions and feelings. Why it's so damaging? When you dismiss her emotions, you're essentially telling her that her internal experience is wrong, invalid, or unimportant. This creates profound self-doubt and teaches her that her feelings don't matter. Examples that destroy: you're too sensitive, or you're overreacting, you're crazy, or you're being dramatic. Laughing at her when she's expressing hurt or concern, ignoring her when she shares something important to her. Here we go again, or sighing, eye-rolling when she expresses emotions. Telling her she has no reason to feel the way she does. Turning her emotions into a character flaw. I can't deal with your emotions right now. The lasting impact. She learns to suppress her feelings, leading to emotional numbness or explosive outbursts. She stops trusting her own instincts and perceptions, making her vulnerable to further manipulation. She becomes reluctant to share authentic feelings in future relationships. Anxiety and depression often develop as suppressed emotions take their toll. She may seek validation elsewhere, becoming vulnerable to affairs or unhealthy friendships. 4. Public humiliation or criticism. Criticizing, embarrassing, or diminishing her in front of others, friends, family, strangers, is one of the most ego-destroying behaviors. Why it's so damaging? Public humiliation adds shame to hurt. She's not only wounded by your words, but also by the perceived judgment of witnesses. It signals that you don't respect her enough to protect her dignity, even in public settings. Examples that destroy: making jokes at her expense in social settings, criticizing her in front of family or friends, correcting her condescendingly in conversations with others, sharing private information or embarrassing stories without permission, rolling your eyes or making dismissive faces when she speaks to others, contradicting or undermining her in front of children, flirting with others in her presence, arguments or name-calling in public spaces. The lasting impact: she becomes anxious in social situations, especially with you present. Her confidence in social settings plummets as she constantly monitors her words and actions. She loses respect for you while simultaneously feeling trapped because the public humiliation has made her doubt her worth. The relationship becomes performance anxiety. Trust is shattered because she can't predict when you'll betray her dignity again. #5. Questioning her intelligence or capabilities. Intellectual and capability-based attacks strike at a woman's sense of competence and autonomy. Why it's so damaging? Women have historically been told they're less capable, less intelligent, less competent than men. When her partner reinforces these messages, it confirms deeply ingrained insecurities and limits her sense of what she can achieve. Examples that destroy: let me handle this, you wouldn't understand. Explaining things she already knows in a condescending way, mansplaining. Constantly correcting her or pointing out her mistakes. Implying she's not smart enough for certain topics or activities. Dismissing her professional accomplishments or ambitions. Making her feel incompetent at basic tasks. Are you sure you can handle that? Taking over tasks because you don't trust her to do them right. Belittling her education or career choices. The lasting impact. She stops trying new things, fearing failure and your judgment. Imposter syndrome intensifies, making her doubt legitimate accomplishments. She becomes dependent on others' validation for decision-making. Career progression may stall as confidence erodes. In future relationships, she may unconsciously seek partners who will think for her, perpetuating the pattern of diminishment. 6. Betraying her trust. Trust is the foundation of ego security in relationships. Betrayal doesn't just hurt the relationship, it damages how she sees herself. Why it's so damaging? When you betray her trust, she doesn't just lose faith in you, she loses faith in her judgment. She questions why she didn't see the signs, why she wasn't enough to keep you faithful, and whether she's worthy of loyalty. Examples that destroy. Infidelity, physical or emotional, lying about significant matters, sharing her secrets or private information with others, making promises you don't keep repeatedly. Gaslighting, making her doubt her own perceptions of your betrayal. Continuing behaviors you promised to stop. Hiding important information, finances, communications, plans, the lasting impact. The betrayal becomes part of her identity story. I'm the woman who wasn't enough. She develops hypervigilance in all relationships, constantly looking for signs of betrayal. She may become controlling or suspicious, pushing away healthy partners. Self-blame becomes a default pattern. When things go wrong, she assumes it's because of her inadequacy. Trust becomes nearly impossible to rebuild, not just with you, but with future partners. 7. Criticizing her role as a mother or caregiver. For women who are mothers or who take on caregiving roles, criticism in these areas strikes at the heart of identity and purpose. Why it's so damaging? Motherhood and caregiving are often central to a woman's sense of purpose and identity. Society already places impossible standards on mothers, so criticism from a partner confirms fears of inadequacy in the role she may value most. Examples that destroy. You're not a good mother. Undermining her parenting decisions in front of children. Comparing her parenting to others unfavorably. Blaming her for children's issues or challenges. Implying she's selfish for taking time for herself. Suggesting she's failing to balance responsibilities. Criticizing how she manages household or family matters. Using children as weapons in arguments. The lasting impact. Maternal guilt becomes overwhelming and constant. She overcompensates, neglecting herself completely. Her identity becomes so enmeshed with being a good mother that she loses her individual self. Resentment builds toward you and potentially toward children. She may become controlling of children, fearing judgment about their behavior. Depression and burnout are common outcomes. The criticism echoes in her mind for decades, shaping all parenting choices with fear rather than confidence. 8. Making her feel undesirable or unwanted. Sexual and romantic rejection from a partner creates a unique kind of ego wound. Why it's so damaging? Sexual intimacy is where we're most vulnerable. When a partner consistently rejects advances, shows disinterest, or makes someone feel undesirable, it creates profound shame and feelings of inadequacy. Examples that destroy. Consistently refusing intimacy without explanation. showing more interest in pornography than in her. Lack of physical affection, even non-sexual, making her feel like intimacy is a chore. Being critical during intimate moments, never initiating or showing desire. Obvious lack of enthusiasm during intimacy, making her feel like she has to beg for attention. The lasting impact. She stops initiating, fearing rejection. Sexual identity and confidence are deeply wounded. She may seek validation through affairs or external attention. Body image issues intensify, even if unrelated to actual attraction problems. The bedroom becomes a source of anxiety rather than connection. Years later, even with responsive partners, initiating intimacy triggers anxiety. She may become either sexually shut down or overly focused on sexual validation to prove her desirability. 9. Controlling or isolating behavior. Control and isolation are psychological abuse tactics that systematically dismantle ego and autonomy. Why it's so damaging? Controlling behavior sends the message that she's incapable of making good decisions, and that her desires, friendships, and autonomy don't matter. Isolation removes support systems that could help her maintain perspective and self-worth. Examples that destroy: dictating who she can see or spend time with, controlling finances so she's dependent, tracking her movements or communications obsessively, creating conflict with her friends and family to isolate her, making her account for every minute of her time, requiring permission for basic life decisions, sabotaging her job or education opportunities, monitoring her phone, emails, or social media, punishing independence with anger or withdrawal. The lasting impact. She loses her sense of self entirely, becoming an extension of the controller. Decision-making becomes paralyzing even in basic matters. Social skills atrophy from isolation. Financial dependence creates trapped feelings. When the relationship ends, she faces the world without the skills, connections, or confidence to navigate independently. Recovery takes years, as she must rebuild identity from scratch. Trust in her own judgment may never fully return. 10. Stonewalling and emotional abandonment. Emotional withdrawal and refusal to engage creates a unique form of rejection that damages ego through absence rather than action. Why it's so damaging? The silent treatment and emotional stonewalling communicate that she's not worth engaging with. It's a form of psychological punishment that leaves her in a state of anxious uncertainty, questioning what she did wrong and how to fix it. Examples that destroy: giving the silent treatment for extended periods, refusing to discuss problems or concerns, emotionally checking out during conflicts, walking away from conversations without resolution, treating her as invisible in shared spaces, withholding affection as punishment, creating an emotional wall she can't penetrate, refusing to acknowledge her attempts at connection. The lasting impact. She develops intense anxiety around conflict, avoiding it at all costs. She becomes a chronic people pleaser, terrified of triggering withdrawal. Her sense of self becomes dependent on others' emotional availability. She may become controlling in an attempt to prevent emotional abandonment, or she may preemptively withdraw in relationships to avoid the pain of being stonewalled again. The uncertainty and anxiety create lasting patterns of insecure attachment. The cumulative effect, death by 1,000 cuts. While any single incident of the behaviors above can cause significant harm, the true ego destruction often comes from the cumulative effect of repeated smaller wounds. A relationship characterized by constant criticism, dismissiveness, and disrespect creates an environment where self-worth slowly erodes. This pattern often follows a cycle. 1. The incident. A criticism, dismissal, or hurtful act occurs. 2. The justification. The behavior is minimized. I was just joking. You're too sensitive. 3. The adaptation. She adjusts her behavior to avoid future incidents. 4. The escalation. As she adapts, the goalposts move and new criticisms emerge. 5. The identity shift. Eventually, she internalizes the negative messages and believes them. Over time, her ego doesn't just bear scars. It's fundamentally reshaped around the belief that she's not good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, or worthy enough. The psychology of ego damage. Understanding why these behaviors are so damaging requires looking at psychological principles. Attachment theory. Humans are wired for connection. When our primary attachment figure, romantic partner, becomes a source of threat rather than safety, it creates profound psychological dissonance. Self-schema. We develop mental frameworks about ourselves based on experiences. Repeated negative messages from significant others become incorporated into self-schema, changing how we fundamentally see ourselves. Learned helplessness. When someone experiences repeated negative outcomes they can't control, criticism, rejection, humiliation, they may stop trying to change their circumstances, believing they're powerless. Trauma bonding. In relationships with intermittent reinforcement, sometimes loving, sometimes cruel, powerful emotional bonds form that make leaving extremely difficult, even as ego is systematically destroyed. Neuroplasticity. Our brains physically change based on repeated experiences. Constant criticism and stress actually alter neural pathways, making negative self-perception the default. Why some men engage in these behaviors. Understanding causation doesn't excuse the behavior, but it provides context. Learned patterns. Many people replicate relationship dynamics they witnessed growing up. Insecurity. Attacking a partner's ego can be a way to manage one's own insecurity. Control needs. Some individuals need to feel dominant to feel secure. Lack of emotional intelligence. Many people never learned healthy communication skills. Unresolved trauma. Past hurts can manifest as hurting others. Cultural conditioning. Societal messages about gender roles can normalize disrespect. Lack of awareness. Some people genuinely don't realize the impact of their words and actions. The path forward, healing and prevention. For those who recognize these patterns in themselves, acknowledge the harm. Take full responsibility without justification or minimization. Seek professional help. A therapist can help address underlying issues driving harmful behavior. Learn emotional intelligence. Develop skills in empathy, communication, and emotional regulation. Make amends. Genuine apologies acknowledge harm, take responsibility, and commit to change. Consistent change. Actions over time, not words, demonstrate transformation. For those who have experienced ego damage, recognize it's not your fault. The harm done to you reflects the other person's issues, not your worth. Seek support. Therapy, support groups, and trusted friends can help in recovery. Rebuild self-perception. Actively challenge negative beliefs and replace them with accurate assessments. Set boundaries. Learn to recognize and reject harmful behaviors early. Allow time. Ego healing is a process, not an event. Be patient with yourself. Conclusion. The human ego, particularly in intimate relationships, is both resilient and fragile. While we can recover from profound wounds, prevention is always preferable to cure. Understanding the behaviors that damage ego isn't about tiptoeing around a partner's feelings. It's about recognizing that our words and actions have genuine power to shape another person's self-concept. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, support, and the conscious choice to build each other up rather than tear each other down. When we recognize that our partner's ego, their sense of self-worth and identity, is partially in our hands, we can choose to be careful, intentional, and loving in how we handle that responsibility. The behaviors outlined in this guide represent the opposite: carelessness with someone's sense of self, using words and actions as weapons, and choosing short-term emotional release over long-term relational health. Whether intentional or not, these behaviors create lasting damage that echoes through years and even decades. If you recognize these patterns in your relationship, whether as the person inflicting harm or receiving it, know that change is possible. Relationships can heal, egos can rebuild, and patterns can shift, but it requires acknowledgement, commitment, and consistent work. Remember, the person you're with chose to be vulnerable with you. That vulnerability is a gift, not a weapon. Handle it with care, protect it fiercely, and never use your intimate knowledge of someone as ammunition against them. Their ego, their sense of self, deserves better, and so do you.